This is just a very simple drill for the neck to release the neck. The key thing isn't the motion, the key thing is the intent that goes with the motion. So set yourself up with the alignment points. If you don't know the alignment points, watch the other video on this channel about that. Set yourself up roughly with the alignment points. Once you're in a reasonably good position, you don't have to spend too long with it. Then we have, first of all, the rotation. We're going to rotate the neck, turning the head to one side. The whole time I want to keep this idea of space in the neck, so I don't want to do this under a collapsed neck. I definitely need to have the neck open. And I rotate it to one side, and I go until I start to feel some resistance in the neck. Can't turn anymore because it's starting to feel a little tight. I stay there for a moment, feeling the neck, feeling the tension that stops me turning further. And then I specifically just want to release that tension, letting it relax. And the more I release it, the more the head naturally, at its own pace, returns to center. And then I repeat the other side. The breathing is totally free. I'm just putting all my attention on the neck, feeling that the more I turn, it starts to run into resistances, and at some point I can't move past those resistances, or I've just bumped into them. And then I stay there for a moment listening to those resistances, and then I release, let go of all those resistances, stop holding my neck to the side, stop holding my head to the side, release, and come back to center. At center, I can double check that I've opened the neck enough, that I've got this turning around the jaw and the chest sunk and the shoulders open and all those things. And then I continue to the other side. I turn and I turn until I feel the first obvious resistance. And I pause at that point, feeling that resistance. And then once that resistance becomes very obvious, I release it, release the neck. And let the head roughly turn back to center on its own under the action of release. Same with the other side. And then back to center after you've listened for a moment. As you get more in tune with this exercise, you'll be able to do it a little faster. But in the start, really hone in on paying attention to the resistances you feel as you turn the head. And wait there until those resistances are obvious. And if they're not too obvious, just turn the head a little more. At some point you'll run into the resistance. And then release that resistance, letting the head naturally come back to center only because you released the resistance that came from turning, not because you pulled your head back to center. After you've done this a bunch of times on each side, then you can try and increase the range of motion. I'll do it to the left first. I turn. I still stop where I feel the first resistance, but it's as if I wanted to continue. The intent is to continue if the resistance releases. So I can just wait here, listening to the resistance, with my intent to keep my head going that way, very lightly, not forcing anything, just the idea that it could possibly go. And should something release, the neck then continues to turn until it meets the next resistance. And I can keep going like that, just listening to the resistance until it releases of its own accord. And if it doesn't release, that's fine, but you just stay there with the intent to keep turning the head that way. Very, very light intent. We're not forcing anything. Listening to the resistance that's preventing that from happening. And my neck's not going to release anymore at this point in time, so then I just release the neck, let it float back to the center. Make sure you don't push or rush this process. It is one of stopping an effort, not of pulling the head back to the center. And then I could repeat on the other side. Go nice and slow so you notice as you run into the first resistances. And there's one for me. I'm just going to stay there listening to that resistance, but with the intent to keep turning the head that way. And then a release, that's nice, and it just starts turning. And it kind of gets stuck somewhere again. And I don't push it and I don't force it, I just wait and listen and let the neck unravel in its own pace at its own time. You may find yourself just sitting here listening to tension in the neck. That is totally fine. There will be processes going on beyond your awareness in the unconscious of release. At some point, those processes will manifest and you'll be able to turn a little more. If at some point you're done, or you're feeling done, or like that's enough for today, then you just simply release the neck back to center. Don't rush it, allow it to release at its own pace. Relax in center, just tune in with how the neck feels now, a little more free than before, and then we can release the exercise and carry on about our day. This exercise is super simple, but it's really, really effective for tight sore necks of any kind. And it can be done standing like you saw here, or seated with the same postural ideas. Then you just want to set yourself up, especially in the upper body, exactly the same, but seated on a chair. It works fine in both ways. If your structure's a little bit tight for standing at this point in time, you haven't opened and released it enough, it can get really uncomfortable to stand for 5 minutes, so you're better off in that case seated and doing the exercise enough times that it starts to work on the neck, so you can put all your attention on the opening and releasing of the neck. Work with that one, let me know how it goes for you, and I'll see you in the next video.